Okay, this lesson for the Cornet Project class is entitled The Case for Culpability, Many Questions, perhaps more that have just through accretion uh, and project creep, if you will, topic creep. It just moves so far away from the original text and even the English Bible, that Bible language English, the Bible language Biblical Hebrew, and Koine Greek, for example. All three of those, much of what we can discuss today has gone far beyond. Now, that's okay if you understand the foundational teachings, because I find dialogue and discussion quite enjoyable, and it's enlivening, if you will. A person can actually learn. That's truly the best way of learning, through dialogue. But when we're disconnected from the text, for example, when we talk about a knowledge gap in any organization, especially when you're moving toward a learning organization, you want to define the knowledge gap and then bridge it. So it's really quite irrelevant to those of us who study from the uh, text, whether that be the English, Koine Greek, or the Biblical Hebrew, because most of what's constructed. So regardless of a person identifying Calvin, that is themselves, Lutheran, whatever version of that, Anglican, Arminian, Molinist, whatever philosophies, and Pelagian, whatever that is, or a theistic tradition, Catholic, Protestant, Judaic, Islamic, occultic, New Age, denominational, one through infinity, it really uh, doesn't have anything to do with what we do. I mean, what denomination is tov, the Hebrew word? What's the denomination for language, for arithmetic, the Bible numbers? So that's the liberating reality we have. And the disappointment we find is not that we are disappointed in others. Most people are disappointed in the text. For example, when we talk about culpability, people are born into the world. We're already all dying when we enter this world. So that's not culpability, that's consequence of the one man's disobedience. Sin entered the world, and then behind that, or because of that sin, death entered the world. So we're all dying. Jesus, the great sin bearer, took the sin of the world away. We have no barrier between us and God. He fulfilled all the law. He fulfilled all righteousness. The righteousness of God is defined by the faithfulness of Christ. So we are still dying, however. So culpability is incurred in this lifetime, according to the text. Deuteronomy 139, after the glorious deliverance from Egypt by the great powers of God, the plagues, which were educational for the Hebrew slaves and demonstrable for the Egyptian, the Egyptians, and God certainly showed his power over those deities and forces and delivered them by his power. So at Kadesh Barnea, when they came back, the explorers, and gave an assessment that seemed that they directed the correlation of their assessment to their powers, and they actually appraised the feasibility. They did a feasibility study, which was actually evil according to God, because it wasn't for them to assess their entrance in the promised land according to their feasibility to conquer the inhabitants and to go in and take that land. So God swore in his wrath they've never entered in. But there's a fragment in that text, Deuteronomy 39, speaking of the children. They did not know the day, that is, in that day, they did not know good and evil. Notice the function of the word and conjunction there. Remember, God warned Adam and Eve that in the day you eat, do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Good conjoined to evil. That was something we were never designed to handle. So here, these children here, speaking of culpability, they did not know in that time, the definite article, definitive time here, at this snapshot, if you will, it's about knowledge at this moment, but they're children. So it speaks of, so we have an age of accountability, but with that age, it's mediated. First, we should say the degree of knowledge through observation of children, not experience of children, but observation that they make. And then, of course, we can start that incrementalized expectation as they become older. And we now see here, we go to Ezekiel 18, where we talk about a son who observes his father. A son, he will see This is sign of the direct object. All the sins his father did, which his father did. We're reading this direction, remember. This is biblical Hebrew, and we're reading this direction. So we come here and we continue this direction. And of course, we're going this direction. So now we're here. So it's a lot to do to get there. It's just the language is very disappointing. In the seminary, we were taught by perhaps the unsurpassed language professor, Dr. Murray, and his adherence to the language. And it's Eastern Oriental, but it means it's concrete. It's very tangible, understandable. So when we discuss, for example, in the West, resistible, irresistible grace, that's more of a concept. But when you place it in the highly inflected Koine Greek language, very wordy, it's almost painful. It's so crude that it's disappointing to those who would hear it. But to communicate, it was designed in these languages chosen to assure that it's about Christ. So Christ is not a concept. Grace, the grace of God, there's a personification, and that refers to the Christ. And grace, the word, refers to favor, where a favor is extended, something unmerited by a king, a sovereign. So that's very much according to the concrete understanding of the Bible. But when we look through the lens of a Western Occidental mind and we do all this work and we find ourselves, as you all are now learning, you're left out of the conversation because truly, in many ways, you're the only one that has something to say. That is, that's scripted, because you go back to the text. And you can go back even further to this form of Hebrew, go all the way back to the Paleo, where it's pictographic, it's numeric, it's phonetic, we have words. But truly, that's the disappointment. So was the seminary I attended correct to say the language of Hebrew is a concrete language? Were they correct to say that it's more concrete rather than abstract? Because we know that I remember the first time I saw something and they said it was a piece of artwork, but they called it abstract art. Well, that helped me, but I didn't know what the word abstract meant. So I continued to walk through this gallery. I think it was on a field trip with our school, and I know we were elementary or junior high, but I was waiting to see a picture that I could appreciate because my mind couldn't comprehend the relevance of the abstraction. So this is why, for example, concrete, we consider organic. We have a living faith. We serve the living God. We're under the headship of Jesus. Some call it by accommodation, where God speaks in a manner to accommodate us. But that would appear to be the entire Bible is written for us to have an intelligible grasp on the implications of what it's stating. For example, the first time someone posited to me or posed to me this question about what happens to babies when they die, I said, first of all, only in a religious abstract contemplation would anyone be caused to even consider the question and concern. It's tragic enough that a child dies as a child, or even an infant, we would say. But to then be plagued by a question that wouldn't originate from the text, because we notice here a son who will see. This is observation. So we notice knowledge is empirical. So we have children here in Deuteronomy and a correlative text in Ezekiel where a son will see all the sins. And then he doesn't do those. He sees that, and it says in English, considers that, but it means he observes it. And now he is, in that observation, acquired knowledge, good of the good and evil. He now can know through observation good and evil. And that conjoined reality of good and evil, if he steps into the broad way, evil way, then he'll lead to destruction. So if he follows the path of his father, that is a destructive path. But notice that if he doesn't follow it, the sins of his father won't be visited upon him. So when we get to our New Testament, and you all are studying your languages, you notice we have believe as a word, G4100. We have disbelieve as a word, Strong's number G569, and those are deliberate. And so it's good to believe, it's evil to disbelieve because it's deliberate, it's causal. And in one text, John 3:36, and I'll end there to show you how concrete it is, the Koine text to correlate concretely with the Hebrew, it says everyone who is already believing into the Son is already having everlasting life. But it says the one who's deliberately, causally refusing himself to be persuaded in the Son, by the Son, or is negating passion for the Son. Now that's all deliberate. So when someone says, what do we do about ignorance and apathy? And someone says, I don't know and I don't care. To say I don't know and I don't care, those are deliberate, willful acts according to the Bible. So very concretely, it relieves the covenant community, for example, as where I pastor, from somehow trying to remedy people's ignorance. We don't have a remedy for ignorance beyond teaching. That's the Great Commission. So we teach, disciple, and we teach all things. And then we don't have a remedy for apathy except the disclosure through positing outwardly of the reality that for someone to be without persuasion is presupposed by their unwillingness and deliberate causal refusal to be persuaded by the Son. They deliberately negate passion for the Son, and they refuse to trust in the Son for everlasting life. So this is the case for culpability. It's incurred in this lifetime, and there's no such thing as the angst or even the question that should occur and cross the mind of a parent in the midst of a tragedy. That's all imported through eisegesis. And of course, the text is, again, those of you that are working so hard and studying, first, it's good for you, and it's good for those that you will then collaterally extend this favor to them by sharing with them, positing outwardly what you've learned. So we will dig in there and bring it out and posit it outwardly. So you have a blessed day and enjoy this lesson.